the moon made of green cheese? Why does Intel smell of glue? I bet you don't even have a clue.
Oh, that's cute.
Welcome to Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast. That was a catchphrase submission out of nowhere from Blokes. I don't know. I gotta say, I think we're gonna have to keep searching for a new catchphrase if we're to use one. Frankly, I think half of it doesn't make sense and that you were just really excited it was rhyming. But Intel smells of glue because now they're gluing their processors together after giving AMD shit for doing the same thing.
To the rhyming scheme, there doesn't seem to be the most clear rhyming scheme considering the first line ends with cheese. But, you know, I guess there was something there.
If haikus are a thing, I guess this is.
This is not a haiku.
I know, but are haikus even really a haiku? I mean, really?
I mean, they're the highest form of poetry. 575 art.
All right. How are you doing, Dan? I see your dog behind you.
Yeah, she's pretty good. Just took her for a walk. I guess I'm good. Didn't have to kill too many zebrafish today, so.
Yeah. It's pretty hot in the Midwest. In fact, it's funny because it's so hot in September, but it's September, so you can't cheat. Mother Nature can't get too mad at us with global warming. It's trying to kill us, but it's still fall, so the night gets to like 50, but it's 87 right now.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah. Is it hot in the Northeast?
Nah,
this is the weather report part of the podcast, if anyone's wondering.
It's like 60s. Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
You know, we talk about moving to some other place in the Midwest soon. I don't know. That 60 sounds nice. Okay. Well, I guess, it's actually been a weird week for me. I killed 2 possums this week.
That's good.
A couple traps went off, and then I saw this enormous tail crawling away in the pantry through a hole, and I was like, I don't think they have dog-sized rats.
That's only in New York.
Yeah, and apparently Seattle. I looked it up, and then I heard clicking moving around under the house. For those who don't know, I don't live in like a swamp or like I live in a city, but apparently I'm next to a preserve. So yeah, my Dan knows this. I have a rapier. It got some use. Rapiers and hatchets, really good at taking out possums.
And as of what we learned a couple years ago, 3 of our dogs are pretty good at killing a possum. If you remember us returning to a dead possum to your house like a week later.
Yeah, well, so everyone knows. We'll see. This is going to be a very polarizing opening to an episode, but you'll let me know if we need more possum talk. But let's get to the first story, Dan. So I don't know. Did you watch my NetCat video, or did you see any stories about this? The NetCat security flaw.
Yeah, I mostly heard about it through conversations with you and some articles I read, but I don't know. It's these these flaws seem to just be stacking up like monthly at this point. Like it's a new one every month.
What's really funny is me and you were playing Borderlands 3 the other night, and with another one of our best friends. We would consider him kind of a cousin at this point, and he works at a healthcare company. And I told him that one of the solutions to disabling or to mitigating this flaw might be that you just have to disable virtualization in your CPU. And he started laughing, and I'm like, good, I'm glad. See, he really does know enough to talk to PC hardware stuff about. He's one of my few friends who really gets it, and it's just like, he works at a healthcare company, just like the person in episode 8 of Broken Silicon used to. and he gets that disabling virtualization is an 80% performance drop. And he said, wait, I know our servers use Intel. I looked it up. Like I might actually talk to someone about this now that you've mentioned this to me. And I will say this too. Someone in the comments of YouTube said, hey, what does the guy from episode 8 think? And I responded, what does he think? How do you think I know about it before everyone else?
Yeah.
So this comes from him. And to be clear, I've talked to him a bit. Actually, I still need to talk to him. There'll probably be another podcast with him once he figures out all the flaws, which I'm excited for. But we're going to wait for him to get all the information in first. It's not confirmed. It's not confirmed that you need to disable virtualization. But he is so done with Intel for his personal servers, and all he advises now within the company is switching to AMD. Everyone is fed up with this. Like it's and that's why I called that video the last straw to break the camel's back, because it's like, yeah, just disable hyperthreading and virtualization. You know, the entire point of a Xeon.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it just gets to a point where, what is it? Like, you work on these big systems for such a long time, and they don't really upgrade them that often. But if they have to keep doing this, like, yeah, this could be the straw. Like, companies that were planning on being on Intel for several years, who knows what will happen?
Yeah, I think this could be the death nail for the server market. And, you know, the one thing I will say is litigation is going to come to Intel, guys. Like, that's how bad this is. I won't confirm if I know something, but well, I basically am confirming that. But I don't think that's, I have to tell you that I know that there are law firms putting together big lawsuits against Intel right now, just because I kind of have to say it for insider reasons, right? I haven't bought any stock since this, though, so it doesn't matter. But seriously, I don't think I need to tell you that, though, right? Like, the CEO during the first security breaches, he sold all of his stock a month before the security stuff came out. And I know they say they fired him for having a relationship with an employee, but it was consensual, and it had been going on for a while. I'm pretty sure they pushed him out because he was asleep at the wheel, and he was clearly a worthless CEO. Which, if you look at Intel right now, an argument could be made, at least. At least there's no one in his corner, I would say, from the point of how they're doing. But yeah, let's move on. So number 2, speaking of server markets, AMD is already in closed-door meetings, I believe it is, showing Zen 3 will be significantly more efficient than even Intel's 10-nanometer server chips. And I find this absolutely hilarious. Because those 10-nanometer server chips, I give it a 50-50 chance they'll even exist. And if they do, I think they'll be clocked super low.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add to this. It's just more bad news for Intel's upcoming next, 5 years probably?
Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. Like, and people are, well, about 10 nanometer, it's like, first of all, it's not coming to server. And second of all, AMD is already showing closed door benchmarks of their next gen CPUs that are coming out next year, by the way, people, beating Intel CPUs that don't exist, probably will never exist. And if they do, they'll come out in 2021, I would assume, at the earliest. So it's just, I just don't get it. I actually have a video I threw together after reading a Seeking Alpha article about buying Intel. And I'm just like, I don't get why you got to catch this falling knife. If Intel bottoms in stock price, it's going to be after Zen 3 comes out, people, not before. Not that this is financial advice or anything.
Yeah.
This is purely entertainment, Dan.
Yeah.
But we have a reader mail question, which you can submit if you support us on Patreon. Dragonetti asks, Tom, I was reading some information regarding AMD and TSMC development plans for implementing new and improved technologies, and I was wondering if someone has similar ideas or information. We know Zen 3 will be produced on 7nm plus. We know TSMC claims it increases transistor count by 20%, reduces power by 10 under the same loads. So with these architecture improvements, I think this could be a beast of an architecture and quite a boost. But what else is coming to Zen 3? And he posits some scenarios, but really it's like I've already done a few big videos on Zen 3. I'm like the Zen 3 flag bearer, and it's because I see this as AMD's Ivy Bridge. This is when AMD conquers everything. Here's what I have been told: double the efficiency, massive L4 cache, 1 gigabyte plus, notable independent IPC gains from clock speed or the cache. I don't know how much higher, but I would say that means 5 to 10%. It's not going to be, well, even Zen Plus, I believe, was like a 5%. So I believe more than Zen Plus's IPC increase, not Zen 2 perhaps, but I think that means at least 8% IPC increase. And then SMT4. So they're doubling the threads per core, another let's say 8% IPC, a massive L4 cache, which in most applications will have huge ramifications as well. And overall, this should lead to double efficiency. But even in terms of raw performance, it should be clocked higher as well, just like Ivy Bridge was. And I think this is the big singularity point here, just because it's like they're getting better and better. And Zen 2 is frankly over twice as good as Zen 1. But because it doubled the cores and increased IPC at the same power usage. So that's over twice as good. But Zen 3 is doubling threads at least and increasing IPC and then cutting power down. So any 65 watt 8 core you have now, which people forget, I know the 3700X is, 95 watts, but so the 3700 will be 65 watts whenever they release the budget version. And that 65 watts is now going to be like 35. And now it could have more threads. I know it's not quite as big of a deal as Zen 2 from a raw performance point of view, but this is almost as big, or at least I would say closer to Zen 3 than certainly anything like a TOC or a Zen Plus. And because of that, right, this is over the finish line. This is like Zen 2 made it hilarious, and this is going to make it a non-starter to even choose Intel. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I guess we don't know how much of this will be put into consumer models at this point, just because I don't know how much of this is even necessary at this point to put into consumer models, but I don't know.
I've been thinking about that a lot recently. That's a good point. I think Zen 3, obviously for Epic, they'll want to give you SMT4 and a ton of cache, but I think it makes sense for some mobile chips to get SMT3, assuming it's not a ton of cores. That's really up for debate. Me and Cortex talked about that a lot, actually. We'll probably talk about it again. It's just, if it is bogged down from people I've talked to, 3 threads will be utilized if built correctly. It just will be used. 4 threads, no. You could lose performance unless it's a specific application. But, I mean, even if we remove the SMT.
Well, like 1 gigabyte L4 cache, I think that would obviously be a positive for consumers. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to give it to everyone, though. That's what I would say. Is what I could see happening is in 2020, there's like a 3920X, which is just like a 5 gigahertz 12 core. They just released 4.8 to 5 gigahertz versions of all of their existing Zen 2. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, they'll release like a 3930, and who knows what they call it, right? Like, I don't know. Or like, I don't know what they would call it. And that's the version that comes with the SMT3 and maybe even just half a gigabyte of HBM or a gigabyte of HBM. And it's like, that one's another $200.
Definitely. I mean, I would definitely expect it on Threadripper and Epic. Definitely Epic, but yeah.
Yeah. I've always seen it. I know Xbox was considering SMT3 for Xbox too. I don't think they're using it anymore, but they were considering it. What that tells me is they will definitely use it on Threadripper then. But I doubt they'll even give SMT4 to Thread. But maybe I'm wrong. They might give SMT4. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if what they decided is, certain models of AM4 get SMT3, and then certain models of Threadripper get SMT4. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, maybe. I guess we'll see when it comes out. I mean, I think something like SMT3 on the Xbox would make a lot of sense just because of I don't know, just because it's a more custom machine, so they could. I think someone like Xbox with a consumer-facing product would maybe be able to utilize that better than like a consumer CPU. I mean,
Well, what you actually mean is a Windows PC, because the way I've heard it described to me, and people keep bringing this up to me a lot lately, is that seriously, Windows Scheduler is horse shit. Like, it's just not, like, it's just like I think Cortex said to me, it literally just doesn't know what to do with threads. And like AMD's working with them on this now, and it's getting way better. Like, if you look at new gaming benchmarks, the 2990WX, which is all about the threads and has a segmented memory system, is actually gaming almost as well as the 16 core now, finally, in most games. But so there's progress being made, but it's just like I've seen benchmarks where the Linux version of an application gets a 50% boost using Threadripper.
Well, yeah, it just comes down to that thing I think I've brought up before, where it's for some of this stuff, it's like how much is it the hardware the limiting factor, and how much of it is just the software is the limiting factor in a lot of these things, because it seems like a lot of the software developers aren't trying that hard to make it work, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, Jim Keller definitely wants to point two fingers at software developers right now. All he talked about, both in person and in that video I uploaded, was just like, hey, maybe you guys could do your job.
Yeah, that might be good.
All right, and number 3. 127 watt i9-9900K is coming out, KS, kind of. And what I thought was hilarious when I dug into this article is what they said is this: it technically has the same specs, right? Did you skim this article?
This one's
okay. I'm not.
It's weird.
Okay, so everyone understands, the 9900KS was announced as having technically the same specs as the 9900K, but it comes with a 4 gigahertz base mode option, I think, and that is 127 watt, which I always love that 127 watt. Why not 125? It's probably really 140 watt, and they're just like, because they know anyone with a bigger heatsink than one, because then they can reject it to OEMs. No, that's not 127 watt. That has to be at least 125. And then they'll build it with like a 140 watt.
And I'm sure 140 watt, knowing Intel, means not 140 watt, but.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So it's 127 watt TDP with 4 gigahertz, which is really probably like 140. And then that's a 4 gigahertz base, though. So a 10% higher base clock for 34% more TDP. So the 5 gigahertz has to be 200 watt.
Yes. I didn't do the math, but I'm just trying to think about it in my head. But yeah.
You know, I want to be clear. I always hope for the best. I always do. And I was like, who knows? Maybe they'll get like a 5 gigahertz with like a 4.5 base, and it'll have a 180 watt. And that would be something that would fit into a lot of PCs.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing it. This is Intel trying to lie that this is just the FX 9590, that 5 gigahertz pile driver. That's what this is. I don't think it will use it might use 220 watts. I have no evidence it won't. I don't know.
Well, I have to imagine, just with this weird thing, like they have to be discontinuing. I mean, the i9-9900K, right?
No, this is just better yield sold above it, which is weird. They don't just call it, actually, right? So that's weird that they don't just call it a 9950K. I think they already have a 9920X for HEDT though.
Oh, okay. So they can't say this is better than that.
Yeah, well, they should. I don't know. Then you should have called it a 9900.
The 9900K.5.
This is something I want to point out too that I realized as I'm reading this right now. It's like So one thing people talk about a lot is it's like, well, can it do 5 gigahertz? And that's a meme. Frankly, it's a meme making fun of Intel fanboys at this point. But at the same time, you understand the base clocks of a lot of Zen processors are a lot higher than their Intel counterparts. I mean, the base clock of the 9900K, which is renowned for 5 gigahertz clocks, is 3.6 gigahertz. Unless you over double the TDP, you are a 3.6 gigahertz base, which is lower than its counterparts from Zen 2. So I know Zen 2 doesn't boost as high, but its base clock's significantly better.
It seems like whatever they're doing overall with their structure is pretty strange, because there's also the 9900KF, which I don't understand what the purpose of that is, but
it doesn't have integrated graphics.
Oh, okay. But they're selling it. Okay.
They sell it for a little less. So yeah, I don't know what the price on this will be either. I think it'll probably be
$550, maybe.
It doesn't seem that much better, so one would hope. I honestly don't know. It says special edition too, so you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if this was like a limited release, and they're not even really selling a lot of them. They just want to be able to say they have something close to a 3900X, even though it's not going to be. But speaking of not close to a 3900X, number 4, TigerLake info. And here's the thing. Before I talk about TigerLake for 2 of our podcasts in a row, people are probably going, why is this guy talking about TigerLake? But it's almost like it's not as interesting as Zen 3, to be clear. But it's one of those things where I think we need to pay attention to this, because whether it's good or not, it's going to be funny. Because now we know it's definitely going to have Willow Cove cores, which is the next gen after Sunny Cove. Sunny Cove already having 18% higher IPC than Coffee Lake. And it does. It's proven. It can't boost at all because it's on 10 gigahertz, but it's on 10 nanometer, but it does have 18% higher IPC. So that is true. And apparently Willow Cove could have another 10% or 5% at least. So, all right. Let's say it's 10, which it probably won't be, but that's the most I would guess. 10%. So 1.1 times 1.18, right? So now...
That's math. Mental math. I don't feel like doing right now.
But you're almost at 30% higher IPC than Coffee Lake.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a quad core that might have the performance of 6 cores on desktop, or almost 8 cores.
I know you're really excited about
how dumb this is.
The singularity. I'm calling it the singularity of where this node gets more efficient than their desktop hardware.
Well, not just the node, but the architecture, to the point that everyone's like, why are you even selling these? and then Intel's answer is because we can only make 10 of these. Like, that's what's so funny about this, is like their 10th gen laptop processors. Yeah, most of them are still 14 nanometer. I know they got those 10 nanometer ones, but it's very funny for me to watch, because I think we might get to a situation where you have these embedded motherboards with the 10 nanometer TigerLake CPUs built in. And if they could actually boost and you could actually overclock them, like they're unlocked to like 4.5 gigahertz, even if efficiency goes out the window, who knows? Like, a quad core 4.5 gigahertz that has 30% more IPC than Coffee Lake, that's going to probably be better at gaming than their new 10 core or something. And it's going to look, I want to see it.
30% better. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know how much that translates, but like maybe better than like a 6 core. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it'll definitely be better than their 6 core. Except in some games where it might get crazy bogged down. But because of the security problems, less cores will probably actually play even more into TigerLake's favor. I want to watch this. And this is that video I made. It was a very quick video. It was prepare for Intel's hibernation. But I actually think the point I made there was very, like, just get ready to go. Why are there these awesome things Intel's making here? And then on desktop, there's nothing. And it's like, because they've given up. They saw Threadripper 2 and they said, we're done.
Yeah, and they can only make 10 of these, alluding to your previous comment, they can only make 10 of these at a time.
Yeah. And so let's move on to number 5. Boost clocks on Ryzen are fixed. I have multiple people in my Discord telling me it's fine now.
I mean, I guess that's what we said previously. I mean, I don't know. That's good.
Yeah. I feel good to know that we called it right again. Like you had a couple of tech tubers I saw jumping out. Like, frankly, I get it, and I maybe I've done it before, but like a chance to get people think I'm such an AMD fanboy. I'm not. There's just so much shit to throw at Nvidia right now, and Intel's in a hole. I don't dislike Intel at all. I still use their products, but I like their company. I like the people I met there at Hot Chips, but they are in a hole. So I know that I make two types of videos most of the time. One where I call Nvidia stupid, and then one where I tell you Intel's doomed. But I'm just saying, like, I'm not gonna make a video against AMD because I need to balance it. There's nothing to say. I have nothing to say about these boost clocks. I was like, they are boosting. And I think people are overblowing this. And also, from what I heard from talking to Steve Walton at Hardware Unboxed, he said he thinks it's probably a BIOS thing from the start. And anyone who jumped down AMD's throat, it was a BIOS thing. AMD didn't lie. They fixed it. It's a CPU launch. And, I would rather have a boost clock that's 100 megahertz lower than later than have a 10% performance loss from security problems.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess looking at it, the previous clocks, it's not like they were insanely below what you would expect for boost clocks. I mean, it's not good that when they came out, they weren't boosting properly, but I don't know.
Yeah, I will say this, though, about AMD. I've talked to people who work at Intel. I know Paul, not an Apple fan, has a family member who works at Intel. And he's talked to me about this in detail, and other people have too. Like, Intel's quality control is honestly unparalleled. The stuff they put into, now, if they have an architectural weakness for securities, that's not the same thing. But their quality control is insane. Every Intel product I bought works the day it comes out, working drivers, working. It all just works, as Jensen would say. And so that's something where AMD is just a smaller company. And that's one reason I didn't really even honestly, if I'm being honest, consider buying Ryzen 3000 at launch, because I'm going to wait for the bugs to get worked out. And I don't see that as a thing with Radeon. Well, it is a thing with Radeon. It's just better than Nvidia, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you look back at those previous, like I remember with the 7000 series, like those things got 20% better over time, it seemed like. But
yeah. So there is a thing to be said for waiting a little bit with AMD. Hashtag always waiting AM dumbs. If you're a WCCF fan, it's all they say in the comments. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think people really played this up too, because everyone was mad that we didn't get 5 gigahertz CPUs, and like, guys, they have them. They're just not out yet.
Yeah.
I don't. Actually, I forgot to talk about this before. Well, actually, let's get to this reader mail question. So Carbon Cry writes in, as you can if you support us on Patreon, and says, should I buy the 3900X as an investment to get my sweet $5 reimbursement for the boost clock false advertising?
Well, I will say I previously tried to do this, Tom, and it failed because I do not live in the state of California. So if you live in California, maybe.
Yeah. Did you see that check I sent you a picture of the other day?
Yes. Was that?
Yeah. Hey, guys, I'll have you know, because Sony removed Linux from the PS3, I am the recipient of $3.02.
That class action lawsuit was totally worth it.
Totally worth it. I got $3.02 off of my launch PS3 because they removed Linux. I guess the answer is no, and I don't think there will be a lawsuit.
Serious advice, no.
Yeah, all right. So one thing I forgot to mention before that I want to touch on probably now is we had the script together, and then the Zen 2 Threadripper information broke. So that's also out there, and I just did a video on it, as I alluded to earlier. Yeah, I mean, I'll sum that up in this podcast as well, just so it doesn't seem like we're ignoring it. But there wasn't that much info in there, I thought. There was just, it's coming out in November, but based on what I said in my video that I thought was interesting about Threadripper 3000, they're launching the 24 core first.
Okay.
And they're delaying the 3950X at the same time.
So wait, what do you think that means? I guess
I think that means they still don't want to give you 8-core chiplets. Right? Why would they do that at the same? They're not launching the 32 core at launch? Come on. And then they delay the 16 core AM4 chip? It's because remember NetCat? They know they need every 8-core chiplet they can make for Epic right now. And they aren't gonna. I have a hunch that the 3950X will actually get good yields. I do. I think they also probably delayed it because they want to actually give it Threadripper yields, because it will be the hallmark. I think it will actually overclock a little better than the other ones. I mean, if you look at the 3700X and the 3800X, they're like garbage efficiency for what they should be compared to Epic. And it's simply because they're not, I heard people say that, is it second tier yields? I'm like, it's not even third. I think it's fourth tier yields are going to the 8-core chiplets right now, but they had to launch with 8-core chiplets, and it's cheaper for them to put one 8-core in an AM4 thing than 2 quad cores. I'm guessing is why they did that. Also, it gets lower latency, I guess, in some games. So that's why they do that. But I think for sure the reason they're doing this is they just don't want to give you any 8-core chiplets for the time being, because they need everything for their massive Epic orders.
I guess the other option would be manufacturing issues, but
I guess, right? I don't know what it would be, but I suppose that could happen. What I would also say is they said it's gaming focused first. So what that tells me is they're probably going to launch with a 24 core, a 16 core, and I don't know what the prices will be, but I bet they're going to be clocked faster. And I think the 16 core, it's very clear they're using 4 chiplets instead of 2 for Threadripper. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they used 4 times 4. And they were just the best quad core yields they had. And then they clocked them up to, it got to 4.8 gigahertz. That's what I've been thinking. I know the 3950X goes to 4.7. I'm like, I bet there's a Threadripper one that's 16 cores, but it goes like 4.8 and has a higher base clock. And then it has, like a 200 watt TDP. And then they have the 24 core that will probably also be clocked better than the 3900X.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the summary of Threadripper 3 for anyone who didn't hear about what's going on there. I have come to the conclusion, by the way, based on this information, that, I think no matter what I'm getting, I'm just gonna upgrade Thanksgiving or Christmas. And we'll see what it is. I'll decide which platform, when I decide. But now that this will have been out by November, so I guess probably Christmas then, if I'm being honest, and just give it time for the bugs to get worked out. Because me and you have talked about this before offline, Dan. It's really not about pricing anymore. It's about when will I have a week to build this and make sure it works.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm usually like leaving work at 6:30 every night, and I'm just dead on the weekend.
My schedule is I work from like 8:30 to 4 or 5, and then I do videos for another 4 or 5 hours. And then I also work for this channel exclusively for like a 6-hour day on the weekend. And then I take a day off a month to also focus on this channel if I think I'm falling behind. So yeah, I'm basically working 2 jobs, and I know you're really in demand in your lab.
We're all in demand in my lab.
We are all treasured people at Dan's lab. But that brings us to number 6. So do you see the Samsung and Gigabyte PCIe 4.0 SSDs?
I mean, yeah, those are nice big numbers.
That's how I know I'm gonna upgrade. It's like this is what I'm waiting for: competition and the best PCIe 4.0 SSDs to come out, because I'm not getting something slower than the than the PS5's drive. The PS5 will have at least 3.5 gigabytes per second. It would not surprise me if it had 5. And so I want my drive faster.
Yeah, I mean, I want load times to be a thing of the past on my console and on my PC when I get it the PS5 whenever that happens.
Yeah, so I think it's worth waiting. And just so everyone knows, Samsung announced, well, I'll cover Gigabyte first. Gigabyte announced it's about the size of an RX 5700 as far as I can tell. And it's literally a PCI times 16 drive. And I think it needs a 6-pin. And it has 15 gigabytes per second of bandwidth.
I mean,
that's approaching a graphics card.
Yeah.
Like a really weak one, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's just at the point where, like, yeah, downloading things, it's, I don't know. I imagine that's getting to the point where I imagine almost limitations elsewhere are just going to slow the drive down. But.
Yeah, and Samsung's got a smaller standard, NVMe drive that I have my eye on big time, depending on the price, although I assume will be expensive. But it might be worth it for the data redundancy. The way it works, it's 8 gigabytes per second. It's just one NVMe drive. And it quarantines areas it knows are dying before they die and moves the data to another cell. So they say it's a drive that should never die, and it has extra data redundancy features built into it. And it's lightning fast, just lightning fast.
Yeah, 8 gigabytes per second read write. I guess my question would be is, how much redundancy does it have in the drive? Or did they say that at all, or is it just enough to quarantine off dead segments won't limit your space significantly? Unless you're using this thing for like 10 years or 20.
Well, yeah. And they also said that it shouldn't just have this happen, though, right? Like, this isn't something I've had to deal with any of my SSDs. They all still work fine after years. But they said the way you can write, I think they said you can write to it 2 or 3 times a day for 5 years, and it shouldn't have a failure of any part of it.
Oh, okay.
So they said this is the drive that never dies. So I'm sure it's expensive, but I would consider it for my OS drive just for, editing, and just this is the drive that my PC will never break. If I want my PC to last forever, I don't know. I think this makes a lot of sense. Of course, again, I'm sure it's going to be super, it's again, though, it's like, I don't know how you can consider Intel anymore if you want to make a god tier rig or whatever stupid stuff. It's like you put all this it's like you're missing out on so much performance that you can't even get anymore on Intel.
Yeah.
You probably don't have any more to add to that.
No, I don't.
All right, number 7. So the MS Surface, the next one, which I guess supposedly comes out at the end of this year, may utilize Zen. Didn't say which Zen, but it may utilize it. I think that's actually a huge deal.
I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big. I guess I don't know how much Microsoft sells, but that's a big get for AMD having one of the big computer laptop manufacturers now potentially using their stuff.
Well, that's a flagship one too. This is like if you got into the best NV from HP and Apple. This is what AMD needs to get into. One of those flagship devices that tons of people buy and cost a ton of money, because this is just a vote of confidence from one of the big players. And I don't know if it'll be Zen 2 or not. I still think it's probably Zen Plus, guys. What I put here in the notes is I really hope they build it around AMD, because the problem I saw is, and this really annoyed me in the article, we assume it's the 15-watt model instead of the 25-watt model because Intel's are 15-watt. And I looked it up. The 15-watt Intel i7 Surface books that they were talking about for the 15-inch model, they also come with like a GTX 1050. I'm like, yeah, that's not how this works.
And this will use an APU.
I assume so, right? I assume
Yeah.
It's not also going to use Nvidia, which maybe it would, though. That has happened.
Yeah.
But, and it's like, no, they need to build one of their Surface models completely around Zen, use the 25-watt model, and give it double the battery life of what it had last gen and give it a roughly the same performance. Doing that will just get AMD so much mind share in laptops if they are just in the best, longest lasting laptop. But I really worry that all they're going to do is take the 1050 laptop and shove it in there, not give it more battery life, and say it's $100 cheaper, because that's what keeps happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that might be one of the options they do. But are the Surface laptops, are they generally pretty premium laptops, though? They at least seem to be. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're expensive, really high end usually. At least the Surface laptops are, and that's what this is.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's hope they actually do it correctly. Moving on to number 8, Bobcat Jaguar replacement coming. I don't know how much I have to add to this except that I made a video about this a month ago telling you guys this is coming from a source. And that, the problem I have with this Tech Power Up article is, again, it's always the analysis. Like, they report a leak and then they're just like, so it's probably a dual core. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it is, but...
Because why would they at all innovate on that?
Jaguars had four cores.
Yeah, so this is probably just a dual core then. It's not like they're going to innovate on their previous specs or anything.
It's just, this is the laziness in quote unquote, and I'm rolling my eyes and making giant quotation marks, as Dan can see. And it's just like, this is tech journalism? Come on. They're like, it's because the chips will be smaller and it's a monolithic die, so they'll probably make it a dual core to make up for no IO die. I'm like, what? Those 7 nanometer 8-core chiplets take up like 70 millimeters squared. Even a monolithic version takes up, would take up like 100. They could make a 6-core one that's monolithic and it would still be only a little, like 80 millimeters squared is still pretty damn small, people. Like, my God, that's still half the size of like an i7.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is, actually, let me double check the source here. Let's see. It says AMD is expected to bring back low power of a Dolly value mobile APU. See, this is again laziness in tech journalism here. If I look at what they say, so it'll be 7 nanometer. I'm not sure it's 7 nanometer. I've talked about this over and over. I think it's probably using 12 nanometer non-FinFET at Global Foundries.
Oh, you think this might be the
one I've been waiting for?
Yeah, I don't know what
that's what it says in their leaked PowerPoint. It says value mobile. So why would they not use? Because again, the 12 nanometer FDX non-FinFET, this is quote unquote real, even though the real one at Intel isn't even real. 14 nanometer, guys, come on. Nothing's real anymore. It's just all marketing terms, even at Intel.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think we've had real nodes since like 90 nanometer or something.
I was looking back on it like a few weeks ago, and I think it's been like what, 15 years since nodes were quote unquote real, maybe even before that.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is that was back then. It was still most people were already lying, and there was like a few holdouts. It's like, because that means every single part of it is 14 nanometer. There's one part that's not, So that's what I think they would use, because again, just as a refresher for those who haven't listened to this, the 12 nanometer FDX has almost the same efficiency gain over 14 nanometer FinFET that the 7 nanometer at TSMC gets, or it's like 80% the efficiency gain, and the density gain isn't as good. But if you're just going to make a quad core or a 6-core monolithic die and you strip out some of the cache and some of the other stuff to save die space, just like Jaguar did, you retain most of the IPC, but you make it, 30% smaller or half as big. That's what this is going to be. I think that's a prime candidate for Global Foundry, so they can just spit these out.
On a super mature node.
Yeah, and I also reported on in one of my recent videos that in a presentation, AMD talked about how Zen 2, like 50% of it's 7 nanometer or something. I don't remember. I'm probably misquoting, but like I remember it was like at least 30% or something of the advancement of Zen 2 was all architecture changes. Not anything to do with the IO die or 7 nanometer. So a monolithic version would still have, probably the same. It would still be 30% better than Zen Plus instead of twice as good.
Yeah.
So I could easily see them making a monolith. I just hope they make a monolithic one that's 6 cores. In fact, what they should probably do is save as much space as possible. Maybe remove hyperthreading and just make it 8 cores. Just a tiny little like 15 watt, 10 watt, 8 core that's on 12 nanometer. In fact, that would probably blow away half of what Intel has now. As long as the IPC is even close.
Yeah.
It'd be good enough too. I mean, Jaguar already felt like, remember using that? Like Jaguar already felt like a CPU.
Yeah.
It was close enough, I thought. All right. Number 9, Navi 14 is supposedly coming in October. And I saw Navi 12 as well. But yeah, this is the 5600 and 5500 series.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. This is probably a good time to release them. I guess I don't. I guess I don't know the mentality behind the order in which they release things, but
Yeah, I always said it's like, when is the 5600 coming out? And I said when they want it to. Like, I'm sure it's design complete. I'm sure they could spit them out literally now if they want to. They're already making a bigger die. It's just they want to clear some of that 570 stock. And reading the WCCF article here, I saw they...
so didn't they say like it's replacing the aging stocks or something?
Yeah, and they said it's going to be hard to get the prices to be as competitive. And I was like, let's see. And I went to Newegg today and looked. Yeah, you can get a 570 for 120 still. Yeah. And this is what I've said to people. In my Threadripper video from when we're recording this, which is Friday, for those who don't know, last Friday, if you're listening, unless you're Gerard, who's our editor, I guess, he gets it before you guys.
A little inside sports look. This is recorded
inside baseball. This is what the people want. Us talking about our schedules.
Inside baseball.
Stop.
Okay.
Stop. It's a H3H3 reference, people. But yeah, he said here you're talking about cheap 24 cores coming out, and I just want a $250 good price performance GPU from AMD. And I said, I've heard of this thing called a Vega 56.
Hey.
And at the same time, someone had already typed, yeah, it's called Vega 56. And I'm just like, this is what I've always said is I don't think I get Vega 64 anymore around Navi, but Vega 56, if it's below 250, especially around 200 sometimes on eBay, and then Polaris at 120 new or $80 on eBay. Although I think on eBay those have moved up to more like 90 to 100. I mean, you're not going to beat that price performance. You're just not going to. So just buy Vega. It's not going to age bad. Just buy Vega if that's what you want. However, this will probably be, double the efficiency for around the same price as Vega 56. And I don't know if they're going to have another cut down version of Navi 10. I kept saying I think they will because they barely cut it down at all. But I don't know. It occurred to me recently, Radeon 7 is cut down, right? It's a Vega 60 instead of a Vega 64. So if they're only cutting down Radeon 7 by that little, maybe the way the 7-nanometer process works is there's just a small defect. And someone else mentioned this to me too, actually. I think it may have been, I don't remember who it was. It was either Dort or Cortex. He said, you might need to consider that the 7-nanometer process is so expensive that it's not worth even selling a highly disabled die. Because why would you bother? Just throw it out. No one's going to buy the cost of the entire wafer divided by it. If you can't sell that for, $300.
Yeah.
Which I doubt is actually true, but it might be a combination of both where the amount of highly defective dies that are salvageable are like really low.
Yeah.
And then also they're like, what's the point of us cutting it in half or something? Just buy a Vegas 56 is what they're probably saying. So I don't know if there will be a more cut down Navi 10. I think there's room for it. I definitely think there is. And I will say this though, I would still be surprised if they didn't release some highly cut down Navi 10 in China or something.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what they'll do with Navi 10.
But and I do expect Navi 14 to be 3/4 as strong as like a 5700 at least. Mm-hmm. So I think that means you're looking at a hair below Vega 56 for 250, somewhere around there. And it'll probably be half the energy usage of Vega 56. I think it's still going to be 256-bit. All rumors point to them making multiple 256-bit dies.
So I guess if you're looking at getting a decent price for a GPU, you can get a Vega 56 now, but
this is probably going to be better. They won't release a product at a dumb price. They made sure Navi was slightly better if you waited. But I still think, Polaris is.
I mean, I remember one of the early pieces of advice I got in PC gaming was buy the last gen. Well, they're not going to release something for a stupid price in their new model. And
Yeah.
that's been consistently true over time.
Yeah, I don't agree with people that say buy the last gen. I mean, sometimes you buy the last gen, sometimes you don't. But as a rule of thumb, I think you'll be wrong. Like when the 7950 came out, really, you want to buy a 6970 instead? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's true sometimes, but it's certainly not a rule of thumb.
It's like, well, and I see people go, well, the 6950 is, $250, and the 7950 is $400. Like, yeah, it's twice as
better.
Strong. It has more RAM.
Better.
Yeah, it's significantly more powerful, dude. I don't know and it uses the same energy. I don't know what to tell you. All right, number 10. PS5 Pro launching at the same time as the PS5 base model. One of the main reasons I'm bringing this up, if I'm being honest, is the fact that I fucking called this in a video a few months ago. That I said I feel like there's a good chance they'll launch both at the same time. I have no evidence, but that's what my gut's telling me they're going to do.
Which, I don't know. I feel like might be a weird call, but I guess based on how different the two models are, it might work out fine. Because it does look like so this is predicting like a diskless, pretty cut down version of the better model.
So here was the thought process I had a few months ago. It was basically, I saw the leaked specs for the PS5 and it was like 320-bit, 20 gigabytes of RAM. I've never been able to confirm the amount of stream processors, but I mean, the leaks coming out aren't getting worse. They're getting better. I saw a leak recently that they have dev kits that run at 1.8 gigahertz and which is probably just they're using a 5700 XT, if I had to guess. It's like, that's something I think people don't get. They're like, well, the dev kit has 8 gigabytes of RAM. It's like, you understand the dev kit's usually just a PC or something, right? Well, so it probably just has a 5700 XT with 6. What they probably did is put the fastest GDR6 and then 16 gigabyte. They made a faster GDR6, 16 gigabyte, 5700 XT, and then that's the dev kit, probably.
Yeah, I mean, because 1.8 gigahertz, does that sound a bit low for what you think the PS5 could be, or do you think they'll continue to be low?
For the graphics card.
Oh, well, okay. Never mind. That makes a lot more sense then. Sorry. I was thinking CPU for some reason.
But everything I hear is that it's getting more performance over time in its design, not less. So I don't know what it's going to ramp up to, but I remember the initial leaks were like Radeon 7 rivaling at least. And I'm like, if it's an RDNA version of like a Radeon 7, even if it's heavily cut down, I'm like, what would the Pro version be in a few years? and then it occurred to me that there were two dueling rumors going on. There were two sources. One source said that it was 256-bit and one said 320-bit. And there was a lot more information about the 320-bit model. And I was just like, well, it's probably both. Like, why is that such a hard concept? And I think that's smart.
Yeah, and they'll probably lead with the not cut down version. So maybe that makes sense why we're hearing more leaks about what the potential PS5 Pro could be.
Well, there's another thing too I think people aren't considering. I think if we were to go back in time a year, everyone thought the PS5 for sure is going to use a few Zen 2 chiplets and maybe a Navi chiplet. I remember Adored had a lot of videos talking about the idea of a Navi chiplet with an I/O die that can talk to both the CPU and the graphics card, which is a great idea. But all the information I've seen suggests it could be another monolithic die, or at least that the graphics card will be monolithic completely. So just another monolithic die for the graphics card. And what that would suggest to me is, well, it's on 7 nanometer. They might not have the best yield. So it makes sense that they would make a cut down version of the PS5. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Just because it's a custom graphics card doesn't mean it has to use chiplets. They can, what the Xbox One X uses right now is I believe it's actually a 3072 stream processor Polaris chip that's cut down to 2800 cores. And they just always disable one CU or a couple CUs or something, right? I guess it's 4 CUs, I think. Yeah. To make sure they get 100% yields. So I think it makes sense. I think it would make sense to use the fastest GDR6 on over a 320-bit bus for a monolithic graphics card. And it's just their own. And again, people who like, why 320? Why not? They could make it anything in a multiple of 64. There's no reason, because 320 is cheaper to make than 384. Like there's your answer. And so 320-bit monolithic graphics card with the fastest GDR6. I'm talking 2 gigabit per second or 1.8. Actually, I've heard suggestions it could be like 2.4 or 2.2 gigabit, which is 50% faster than the fastest stuff in cards right now. and then over a 320-bit bus, just a mammoth amount of bandwidth. I think I was 800 gigabytes per second. And then which is insane, but that makes sense. And in fact, Paul at Non-Apple Fan did a test where he found that the amount of CUs in Radeon 7 don't get bottlenecked until about 800 gigabytes per second if you underclocked it. So again, like, you got to look at the information and like align the stars here, people. I think that's what they've decided. I think, not confirmed, but I think that's what they've decided. And I don't know how many CUs, I think between 48 and 64, which,
and I mean, at this stage in development, it's probably getting close to where I think they are finalizing what the hardware is going to be, but it's not finalized yet. I wouldn't think it is, at least, because I would guess the unveil of it is probably like 5 to 6 months away.
It could be a PlayStation Experience, although didn't we hear that that's not happening this year again, or is it? That's usually in December.
I don't remember,
because I thought for sure they would reveal it at PlayStation Experience, but if they're not, then maybe they'll just do a custom release during January like before. Or is it February? I don't know.
I would think that. I feel like a holiday unveil of a new console for like September or October seems a little weird, though.
No, December. Like it's already done. Like they do it before New Year's and they're like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah.
You just bought your PS4 Pro and we're announcing the PS5. I think you're right, though. I think that would still be pretty shady. Not shady, but that's an Nvidia term. I think that would be pretty, it'd be crappy if they did that. I agree. It makes sense that they just reveal this next year in like February.
Yeah. That's what I think will happen.
And at the same time, they reveal, the PS4 Pro is 300. The PS4S is 200. And so, anyways, going back to the overall point, I really think this makes so much sense. I've looked at the bill of materials before. I haven't made the series yet, but just wait, people. In a month or so, I'll do like a 3-part series on 3 to 4-part series, actually, on next gen. And I delayed it because it's like there's so much hardware coming out with Nvidia and AMD right now and Intel. I don't get why I would bother talking about next gen until, think I'll make this probably in a month or two.
And there's doing this right now. I would imagine there's still a decent amount of like tea leaf reading where it's not still pretty unsure with the new tech.
Yeah, and for those that want to read tea leaves, I mean, I did a bunch of next gen console videos 4 months ago. It was my earliest videos. So, the sound quality isn't perfect. You can hear me. And the information's all very good. My opinion hasn't really changed too much from them. If anything, it's little tweaks here and there. Watch those videos to get a gist of what's going on. Xbox is trying out multiple different things, and PlayStation is going in a very traditional route, but they're going for high performance. Again, so bringing it back around, though, to the point.
Yeah, yes.
It's all right. I think what Sony is planning on doing is, and I filled out the bill of materials in one of those videos. I think they could, for $500 and take a $100 loss at most. Probably not even that. Probably a $50 loss, honestly. And if they wanted to, they could sell this for more than 500. I think they could sell it for $5. I mean, it's Nvidia. Nvidia created this market. If they wanted to, what I'm about to describe, I think they could sell it for. I think what I would sell it for is $529.
Yeah, I don't think they.
Dan sees I have the biggest like swarmy smile, like because I work in sales, so I'm like $529. People would still think of that as $500.
I still feel like Sony won't go above 500. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like there's just some.
I think I agree, but I feel like there's I would do it at $529.
I think there's like corporate PTSD because of the initial PS3 release.
Well, yeah. And let me address that because I've seen other tech tubers that I talk to a lot, and just a lot of people say, oh, if these specs are true, it'll be $700. Guys, there's no world where Sony makes this more than 580. No, and that's still too close. There's no world where it's above 550.
And I feel like a lot of that assumption is kind of lying on, like, I feel like we've said this.
The same stuff we hear every gen of how the PS4 is going to be 600 and the Vita is going to be 500.
I feel like we've said this 30 fucking times in this podcast already, but like everything's a moving target. The space is different, will be different in a year from what it will be right now.
Yields will be better. Like GDR6 will be half the price.
Yeah, so maybe if Sony was making this thing right now, it would be $700, but next year it might be $600 or $550. And it's not uncommon to sell a console at a loss, at least initially. It's like all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to count the PS360 gen because Microsoft and Sony were in a war of attrition there.
Yeah, true.
But it's standard to take a 10 to 20% loss. Usually 10% is actually expected. I think the PS4 is about a 10% loss, maybe 5%. That was built in times of struggle, though. That was designed around the Great Recession. So that's why they made it such a budget-friendly device. And I think it was very powerful for the price, actually. Like we're lucky it wasn't weaker.
Well, yeah, and it's just, I don't know, a console is a loss leader because they're expecting you to, like, what is the attach rate? Like 20 games probably? Like they expect the average person to make.
Yeah, I counted mine. I think even me, who mostly games on PC, I'll end up buying at least 20.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I've
over 10 years or something, right?
Pretty sure I bought over 20 games on the PS4. Don't quote me on that. I would need to look and check, but
yeah. And so I guess and this is something Colin Moriarty on Sacred Symbols, which I'll plug it. I think that's a great podcast, brought up. I think it was an interesting point that I've never heard anyone else bring up, which was if it's a discless console, they should almost be giving it to you for free, shouldn't they? Because like you have to download their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting point. That 40% cut they take, they will get out of every game you buy for the entire gen.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, I guess.
Yeah, you've never thought about that, right? It's like that's an interesting point Colin raised. And so anyways, again, bringing it back around as I keep clinging to try to get back to the main point.
Yes.
The summary is this. I always thought there'd be two models because the PS5 sounded super powerful. So powerful that I was like, honestly, in 3 years, even if they and they're not going to do this, even if they launched like a HBM powered version that was ultra powerful, it would still probably only be twice as strong. And the PS4 Pro is over twice as strong as the base PS4. The Xbox One X is it's not fair because the original Xbox
ridiculously
is
stronger.
The original Xbox is a box of shit. So like it's like, oh, here's this GT. It's a DDR3 graphics card. But yeah, so like it's like 6 times stronger. Like you want at least, I'd say 2 to 3 times. I'd say 3 times stronger. And I guess the PS4 Pro is FP16 and stuff too. So it's like 3 times stronger. And that's why you have, I guess, what are they? They usually have 1440p to 1600p games running at higher frame rates than a 1080p 30 game, sometimes 900p game. And yeah, that's like 3 times better. So that's kind of the standard. You don't want to launch a Pro model in a few years that's 50% stronger. And they have a price cap. They can't make a $1,000 console in a few years. People expect things to get cheaper over time in the console space. So that's why.
Yeah, I feel like $500. I feel like $500 is the cap for a console. $550 is, I feel like, is the cap for consoles. But who knows?
Yeah, and here's the thing too. Sony knows that 6nm die shrinks are coming next year, and frankly, and that 5nm will be here by 2021. It kind of makes sense to make 2 models right away. And again, here we go. I'm attempting it. Here comes the summary of this point. I think what Sony's going to do is a 320-bit, if I had to guess, and I'm guessing right, 60 CU model. I've seen a lot of
numbers thrown at me over the past 4 months. That's why I'm delaying that series, because I want to wait for the numbers to be consistent between sources. A 60 CU 320-bit custom model that will have its own ray tracing chip that I think will make Turing look like a joke. And what this will have is the fastest GDR6, which is always a good bet in a console because GDR gets cheaper over time rapidly. So it's good to be a loss leader at first and then become cheaper to make over time. And I think I think the PS5 Pro will have 2 terabytes of NVMe storage. And then they'll have an 8-core, 3.2 gigahertz, at least 3.2 gigahertz, actually. And so what that means is that will easily do ray traced 4K 60 HDR, I think. Now, the ray tracing is still kind of up in the air. I think that's kind of something Sony added in the last year and a half. That wasn't something there at the start, but they added it as far as I'm aware. And I've heard it's more custom than usual. So they want something where Naughty Dog or Guerrilla Games can in 6 months in a reveal of the PS5 show Horizon 2 not fully ray traced, of course, but ray traced to a level that looks insane. And then they're like, by the way, this is running 4K 60 with no hitches. But I think that's what they'll do. And that'll be $500. And that'll come with a 4K Blu-ray player and it will load games instantly. And then what they'll do is, let's do the math right now, right? We have the time. We're on a podcast. Everyone wants more time or something. So the diskless model, so remove $40 right there. So, and let's I'm just going to go for the selling price. They're selling it at a loss. Let's just take it $500. They're selling this model that's really strong for $500. Remove $40. Now we're at $460. No disc player. Okay, 1 terabyte NVMe instead of 2. Oh, all right. Well, we probably remove another 30. Okay, which they're actually not that expensive anymore. So now we're down to $430. Okay, and then what do? I think what they'll do is 256-bit GDR6 that's a little slower. And so, boom, I think GDR6 is $5 each, move another 20. All right, now we're down to $420 per unit. All right, and now we're using cut down dies. So they're willing to do this so that they can use all of their yields. That makes up for that other $20 right there at least. And in fact, I bet they remove a couple other ports. They make it smaller because it will be more cut down, because there's less stuff in it. It will require less cooling. We're now down to about 390. What's my point? The point I'm getting to is they still have that 4 gigabytes of DDR4 in the background for background tasks with an ARM processor. Everyone doesn't know this. The PS4 is a background ARM processor. That's why it also has that advantage. And the PS5 also is rumored to have a more powerful ARM processor with 4 gigabytes of DDR4. So all background tasks, all apps are running in the background.
That background processor, I think, is almost a definite. I think that's going to become the standard.
It actually still blows my mind the Xbox One X didn't do that. But
it was brilliant.
It's probably for consistency. That's probably why they did that. But so what are we talking about overall? We're talking about a $500 4K 60 HDR gaming console with 2 terabytes of storage. And then they remove as much stuff as they can, including the disk. And so it'll probably cut down compute by 40%. It'll probably cut down bandwidth by another 40% as well. And what they'll do is they'll market this as, if you don't have a 4K TV yet, this is fine. This will run 1080p 60 with crazy anti-aliasing fine. This will run 1440p. If you get a 4K TV, when you put it in resolution mode, it'll run 1440p 60 instead of 4K 60. And you know what? It has all of the HDR streaming and all of that stuff you want for Netflix. And you can use PS Now. It's a PS Now streaming device. It's basically for people who don't want the best and don't need the best. And there's a lot of people still using 1080p TVs. And that's why I think, and I'm saying this, I think the lower end version, if Sony wanted to murder next gen, could be less than 400. I could see 350 or 380.
I feel like if they're releasing a severely cut down version of the PS5, I feel like it would almost have to be below 400, assuming the price of the Pro is 500, because you see these cut down models all the time. That was the PS360 era, was they had the premium version and they had the low price version. And essentially, mostly the only difference was a worse hard drive. So I feel like people would be pissed off if they didn't. It was $400 and a severely cut down version. So I feel like the low price version might be just $350 or something. Yeah, if this is all true, like what's going to happen?
Yeah, and if we look at like again, I think what Colin said is such a good point. They know they're locking you into only buying downloadable games, which I'll give Sony this. There's Sony summer sales now that seem to be almost as good as Steam sales. So there's that. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm just saying they are assured you're not getting any used games, which I bought some used games this gen. And so they're sure they're going to make up that money. They're sure. So it makes sense for them to sell for $350, and that's just perfect. You know, PS4S $200, PS4 Pro $280, $300, and then PS5 S $350, and then PS5 Pro $500. I think that just makes sense. I honestly do, and I think if I were to organize the release, like the presentation, they open with like Horizon 2 ray traced 4K 60, and they're like, that was on the PS5 Pro. Then they show the price, and they're just like, this game's as well as a 2080 Ti. This is everything you've ever wanted in a dream PC. It's not $600, it's $500, and you can play your 4K Blu-rays. And then they bring in another dev. You know, who knows who they bring in, right? Probably some Battlefield 6 dev or something. And he comes in and shows a demo, and it still looks gorgeous. And they're like, and this was running on the PS5 Slim. This doesn't have a disc player, but most people we found are downloading games now. And then they showed the $350 price and dropped the mic.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're going to do. And if they don't, then I'm smarter than Sony. I guess that's what I'm saying. No. But I think they'll have the same processor, and I think they'll run at the same clock speeds probably.
Yeah.
You know, and if they could even get away with maybe I think they'll probably just use the same CPUs, maybe slightly less on the PS5 base. In fact, I just thought of this. I know the PS4's DRM is it has to run at 1.6 gigahertz or a multiple of it. So it wouldn't surprise me if they have 3.2 gigahertz on the PS5 Pro, and then they clock the PS5 Slim slower, but it doesn't have a disc player, so they say it's not backwards compatible. And that's another way they lock you into whatever.
I guess I didn't realize they were still attaching things to clock speed.
Hey,
I think that's hilarious.
No, it's on purpose though in that case, because you can't hack the clock speed.
That's true.
And that's what I've heard is people running PS3 emulators. You basically have to clock your graphics card at the same speed as the PS3 for the graphics. It's ridiculous. It's like, guys, you're never going to get that to work. I just really hope it's PS3 backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
Because I'll get the Pro and I will put Demon Souls in. Play it in 4K.
Back to referencing sacred symbols. It's just, it would be insane if the PS3 generation were just stranded on the PS3. Like
They'll do something eventually.
They will.
Well, and like I did, one of my first videos was also talking about that. Like, eventually they're going to upgrade. They're literally still using cell CPUs. Cells. They're still using cell CPUs and servers for PS Now.
It's amazing.
Like, eventually they're going to upgrade to Epic, guys. And that's going to mean they're going to emulate it. So if they can get it to emulate on an Epic server, they can get it to emulate on your console.
Yeah.
Now, if they choose to not do that, I don't know. Sony does dumb stuff.
Yeah, they do every once in a while. And
all right.
I mean, a lot.
All right. So we have a reader mail question here. The ninth dude asks, at Moore's Law is Dead, given the recent leak from the Gears 5 developer about Xbox Scarlet and dedicated ray tracing, I'm beginning to think that AMD's implementation of ray tracing is going to be dedicated add-in card for that maybe we could get on desktop. Part of why I'm thinking this is Navi's PCIe 4.0, but no cards can really tap into the maximum bandwidth. Could AMD be using the extra bandwidth to allow GPUs to talk to the RTU, ray tracing unit? What do you think? Well, what I would say is I don't think they're going to move towards adding cards. I don't think that's AMD's strategy. That's a Nvidia strategy there.
And I'll also just quickly add a failed strategy, I feel like. But go on.
To be clear, I wouldn't mind if there was a ray tracing card I could buy for $200, put it in my extra PCIe slot, and then I just get ray tracing. Yeah, that would be awesome. But I don't know if that's how like supply chains work, how markets work. You can't put that in laptops. It's a problem for other customers. You know, we're a niche market, guys. Adding cards, I'm not sure how useful they are in the future. First of all, so that's the first part of your question. This was a great article, though, or at least, should I say, there were a lot of articles covering this about that Gears 5 dev. He talks about it the way I think it was at PC Games N, I think said, the Gears 5 dev said, ray tracing is going to be awesome, but not on PC. I don't have to tell you, PC gamers. And again, guys, I'm mostly a PC gamer. I'm 90% PC gaming. Right now, I'm playing a lot of console just because there's like one period of every year where I just mostly play console for a few months for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I'm playing Infinite Warfare, which is, by the way, guys, $9 on Amazon. So I don't know.
That is some financial advice we can give you. If you want to play Call of Duty for $9, you can.
Yeah, apparently. And apparently on PS4 Pro, it's a lock like 4K 60. I'm like, okay, I'll just play it. It's awesome. And hey, that's one of the best looking games I've played, by the way. I got to say, I saw a review where they were like, Infinite Warfare doesn't look like the other Call of Duty games. And I'm like, I agree. It looks like a good game. But yeah, moving on, though. I mean, Cortex talks about this. He thinks, and I think it's an interesting idea, that AMD can't just throw out their compute features. The thing they'll do is add a small chip, whether it's on a monolithic die or not, we don't know, but on package at least, that accelerates rays with leveraging asynchronous and compute functions. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That would allow ray tracing to be backwards compatible easily with RDNA and Vega because it's just using the same FP16 and stuff. That would actually allow the PS4 Pro to run ray tracing if they had a cross-gen game and they just had like a...
Because they have FP16 on the PS4 Pro.
Yeah.
Right.
It actually was basically Vega before Vega came out. But I'll talk about that with a non-Apple fan, actually. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're going to do. I don't know if it's on chip or not. I think they're going to accelerate the gigaarrays with a chip that's significantly more efficient because it's dedicated to doing that and not on a... Yeah, I think it is going to be its own chip probably. And what I've heard is the PS5 has its own ray tracing chip. So I assume that's what they're going to do. But I'm not sure. And they could have multiple ways they're doing this. The Xbox may do ray tracing in an entirely different way. I know they were looking into using Zen 3 threads for ray tracing for a while, for a fact. So again, there's a million ways to do ray tracing, but I think the way to do it in the interim is to try to add a small chip that can accelerate the compute features AMD already has, because then you're not wasting resources as much. Does that make sense, Dan?
I think so. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, just...
Well, I don't think it's an add-in card, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'll say this. I really don't feel like add-in cards are going to be a big thing again. I don't know. You said this was a niche space when you started answering this question, and that's the problem is a lot of people that are into PC hardware, the idea of having more things to customize is so tantalizing. Yeah. And I'm excited by the prospect of it too. But it's just like no one wants this added customization except for this niche group of people that really fucking likes customizing their PCs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let's move on. So number 11, which with a heavy heart is the final piece of news I've decided to tell you people. You're not fucking worth 12. That's what I'm saying. So number 11, Turing ray tracing is going to die sooner than you think. So this is based on a WCCF article and a video I believe you watched. It's my recent ray tracing article, which I'm surprised. I guess I'm not. I think people are tired of talking about ray tracing, which I also am. But so I don't think the click rate is that great on the video, but I think that might be my best video. I don't know. Let me just ask you objectively, Dan, being self-conscious. Was that a good video?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, anyone listening to this, if you haven't listened to my NVIDIA ray tracing in 2020, or what did I think I called it, denoising the myth,
Yeah.
denoising the myth of Turing ray tracing. The entire point of this story here, number 11, is that if you're buying Turing for future proofing, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
That's how I would sum it up.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. Turing isn't the only way you can do ray tracing. It's just they figured out they could attach this new function to cores that they were using for professional uses.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would put it is the ray tracing capabilities in Turing are fundamentally built for like graphic designers and video editors to add ray tracing to videos. And when you're editing a video, it only actually needs to run at 16 hertz. When you render it, it'll render it at 30 or 60. And so to do it in a fluid enough way to not be horribly annoying, you can do a full ray trace scene where you're editing a space for a video with CGI, and it'll run at 16 to 30 frames. I think usually what I saw was about 22 or 24, and it's significantly better than previous graphics generations for ray tracing editing. But that's the problem, is it's like, why are all these ray tracing games barely able to hold 30 frames a second? Yeah, because it's not built to run even to 30. It's built to run at 24. And they needed to find a way to tell you this dedicated hardware was for gaming, because NVIDIA is a gaming company, except they desperately don't want to be a gaming company.
I mean, yeah, I guess I don't know how much more I have to add to that. Like, yeah, they're trying to expand into all these different markets, and it's just not working that much for them. That's why we're seeing like they're also trying to add AI to their gaming cards, and that also quote unquote surprisingly doesn't work, because what is AI going to do to help gaming? I don't know.
So yeah, I guess I'll just try to do one big spiel on this. It's just NVIDIA made an early grab for mindshare when they saw they had an opportunity, and they saw that ray tracing was probably the next big thing where people would decide to keep buying giant die graphics cards, which is NVIDIA's entire business model. Their entire business model is around convincing you to pay a lot of money for a gigantic graphics card that they can then cut down and sell to noobs for $200. That is their entire business model. And so they wanted to get ray tracing first so they would get credit for it. And so, the people who buy this early and pay the most money are graphic designers and professional people and semi-professionals. So it doesn't need to run at 30 frames, but then they said they had to make it make sense. But here's the thing. The way it does ray tracing, and this is really the big point, is fundamentally different from how the consoles will do it, both of them, and fundamentally different from how RDNA 2.0 will do it. This is not the future of ray tracing. This is, as Cortex said, a flying car that flies for this is the best analogy I've ever heard for this. It's like if NVIDIA was a car company and they said, here's a flying car and it has wings on it and it can fly. And then reviewers said, why would you buy a car that can't fly? But then it turned out NVIDIA's car can only fly for 5 seconds, so that, you know what, it's still going to crash if you go off a cliff, and it's completely useless. But why would you buy that AMD car? It can't fly. Well, neither can the NVIDIA one in practice, and it's going to crash land next year when all standards are using different methods of ray tracing. All standards, and people hate closed standards and closed ways of doing things. And it gets so much worse, because when I was reached out to by a developer here, and he says, he hated the Digital Foundry video. He said he's a game engine developer, and he said that using NVIDIA ray tracing is just as exotic as just using compute brute force through Radeon. It's not even a standard API right now. NVIDIA didn't release extensions for Vulkan. It's not compatible with whatever the standard will be. And using NVIDIA ray tracing extensions, it says there's an insane setup needed for this, and he knows it's going to be obsolete right away. It's not like you just flip a switch and use it. He says to use NVIDIA's ray tracing effectively, you would have to build an entire engine around it. The future of ray tracing is not going to be plugging in the holes NVIDIA left in their architecture.
And he goes on to say it reminds him ATI actually added tessellation in cards for the first time, but it was their own custom advanced version before there was an industry standard. And he said if you coded for it directly, it was great, but it was nowhere near powerful enough in the first set of cards to be useful at all. And then Nvidia made a standard, and Nvidia has had a tessellation advantage ever since. And I believe AMD will have a tessellation advantage. A ray tracing advantage right when these consoles launch. They already have the dev kits. It's going to be horrible if you're buying. And here's the point I made too, right? Well, I guess actually, let me get to a reader mail question here. So this one comes from Carbon Cry, which again, it's actually he believes a correction or omission, which you can, again, if you support us on Patreon, you can supply yours. And he says Minecraft, and I bring this up in the video, isn't a ray traced game yet. As far as he knows, Nvidia's ray tracing for Minecraft isn't out, and we don't know how it will perform. And we had a big offline discussion about this where he kind of accused me of omitting things on purpose, but I didn't. My entire point is that. So right now, the only way to run Minecraft ray tracing is with a mod. That's the only way you can do it. And his point was, well, you act like Nvidia can't do this better than Vega, but they haven't even released their version yet. And go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to it proves that ray tracing can be brute forced. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens when Nvidia's version of ray tracing comes out for Minecraft. I guess we'll have to compare and contrast the differences in results, but Turing isn't the only way to do ray tracing, obviously, then.
Which was my entire point. And I actually, I don't know what to tell you, Carbon Cry. I rewatched that part of the video, and in it, I don't know if you remember, Dan, I said it's not using Tensor or RT cores right now. I said that in that part of the video, yes. And I said it will improve. So there's no omission, Carbon Cry. There's no omission whatsoever. I didn't hide anything. What I focused on was my point, though. And my point is if you want ray tracing in Minecraft right now, it runs just as well on Radeon. And that's what's so stupid. Even the 580 could run it at 30 frames and 5700 XT at 60. And I believe the 2080 Super could run it at 95 frames. So yeah, it could run it better. I'm sure when it gets dedicated. And so here's the thing too. And one more thing I'll say to Carbon Cry is this. He told me he thought all these people are going to attack my video. Dude, no one's attacked my video. Everyone gets my point. There was one person who did and was very respectful about it. And we talked back and forth on YouTube as well. And he said, NVIDIA is going to release this. And then it's not fair to compare. He basically said the same thing you did, Carbon Cry. And I said, and this is something I didn't even know, and I talked to you, Carbon Cry, is this. NVIDIA doesn't even have a release date for this goddamn supposedly totally exists Minecraft with ray tracing. And I say that in a sarcastic way because I know of several devs who have just canceled their ray tracing plans, and NVIDIA is still putting them on marketing ads as like devs supporting them.
Which, I mean, yeah, you can see that, like, why this would be the case, because if the NVIDIA version of ray tracing for these games ended up being worse than the brute force methods on AMD, it would be so bad for PR. Like,
well, it's not worse. So it is better.
Yeah.
But I think NVIDIA's marketing acts like they show, right? I remember when they unveiled Turing, they showed 1080 Ti's or Titan Voltas or something stupid. And they showed that Pascal was like a sixth as good at ray tracing as Turing. And it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, NVIDIA. I have no doubt Turing is better at ray tracing if you use your method of doing it over even the best method of brute forcing with Vega's compute features. I do. But I think it's only a factor of 2 at most. Mm-hmm. At most, it's a factor of 2. It's not a factor of 6. And also, NVIDIA, I don't know what to tell you. Pascal isn't very good at compute. So if you leverage Vega's best capabilities, or even Polaris's, apparently, it can pretty much run it half as well as Turing. And maybe, and you can just turn down settings. And so it's like, here's my point. AMD is the standard. And I think the way I think the way RDNA 2.0 will do ray tracing will be kind of a hybrid of an entirely new system and leveraging what was already there in RDNA 1.0 and Vega. So with that in mind, right, I can see some levels of backwards compatibility that are way better than what's going on with Pascal. That's my point with this whole Vega thing is it's like the consoles are going to use it. So I bet it. I already know this, by the way. I've talked to people who work at these guys. I'm telling you, the PS5 is going to ray trace like twice as good as a 2080 Ti or more. So please just stop this argument. But with that in mind, if it's doing that, I think there will be backwards compatibility. And instead, right, with that Battlefield 5 update for ray tracing for Pascal, instead of the game running at 1/10 the frame rate for Turing, I think what will happen is Vega will run at a half the frame rate or a fourth the frame rate, and it might even still be a little playable, and it might even be close to what Turing's capable of. And that's my warning. My warning is, and this is my point, we don't know when Minecraft ray tracing is coming out, official, right?
Yeah.
We don't know when it's coming out. We just know it says TBD 2020. So you can't tell me it looks better. It's a demo. And that's my point. All of NVIDIA's ray tracing are demos, effectively. No one uses them. No one's playing Battlefield 5 competitively with ray tracing on. No one's using it in control and not chugging in their frame rates. Although they all tell me they're not, the fanboys, man. But I've looked at the benchmarks. You guys aren't running it that well. And so what's going to happen is you're essentially just beta testing NVIDIA's method, and it's not even running well. And I know you think all these games, like, again, the Minecraft point, no. By the time RTX Minecraft comes out, by the time that comes out, the PS5 will be out. And you'll have nothing to brag about. Like, it's just not future-proofing. It's not, people. Do not buy Turing for future-proofing. And I know it sounds contradictory with the way I talk about Radeon cards, but that's just not, it's not the same. It's not the industry standard. And even at its best, it can't even run Battlefield 5 well. Come on. Do you have anything else to add, Dan?
No.
All right. Well, let's get to a couple more reader mail questions. Otterwise asks, why do you think Radeon Chill is so often overlooked? There's a lot of opportunity here, I think, to better market it to consumers despite lowering frame rates in direct opposition to how a GPU is normally. Is that why? Is it because it's not how you would normally market a GPU? You don't want to market lower frame rates? Do you have anything to say about that?
With Radeon Chill, I would assume like there's some things that are just not that make your game look worse overall, right? Like it.
No.
No? Okay. I don't use it really now.
Have you ever used it?
No.
Okay, thank you. There's a difference between really and no. There was a while where I used it a lot. No, Dan, it doesn't do anything bad.
Okay. I mean, I would assume there's some stuttering increase, but
nope. It actually lowers stuttering.
Okay.
Because it caches frames and actually has a latency reduction when you increase.
Okay.
It's weird. Adore did a whole video on it.
Okay.
So you're a bad person.
Yeah, I'm a bad person, and I can't really speak much to Radeon Chill.
No, what I was going to say is otherwise, I mean, I agree. This is one of those hills I've been harping on all the time. That's what people do, right? They harp on hills.
Yeah, they take their harp to the top of a hill and they play their harp. That's what you mean, right?
An old Swedish tradition. Hey, write us in, Swedish people. That is a tradition, right? You take harps to hills and play them?
Also, Midsummer. Does that happen in Sweden?
Isn't that what you do too? Okay. But no, otherwise, yeah, I think that this is something that's in AMD's court. Adored's done his whole thing where he's shown that it's clearly better if you use Radeon Chill with even an outdated AMD card. With a modern NVIDIA card, it's more efficient. This is the future. I think this is what they should be doing. And they just need to make it so it works on every game. The problem is you have to turn it on manually. For some reason, with every game, and it doesn't work in every game, it needs to work at the BIOS level. There needs to be a BIOS switch that has a kind of a, shall we say, a Radeon Chill Lite, so it barely reduces frame rate, but I think that alone could increase efficiency by 30% in that mode. And I think that would just kill the entire efficiency argument with NVIDIA. It would destroy them. I'm surprised they haven't done it yet. Maybe it's hard to do, though.
And to be clear, what I mean is, even if it's, I'm not trying to say I'm not saying it's objectively worse. It's just.
But there isn't, though. There's actually better frame times.
It's just marketing. Yeah, it's just like what he said. I think marketing lower frame rates looks bad, even if you're essentially you're just rendering frames at a lower rate when you don't need to be rendering frames. I understand why you wouldn't do that.
And they're probably scared someone will benchmark it in a review with the wrong BIOS on.
Yeah, and it gets into that thing tiling, where they reduce resolution in areas where it doesn't matter. I mean, I feel like it's a similar concept to that, where it's a good idea overall, but some of the early implementations of it might be a little clunky in some games.
It would be. That's why I think it just needs to be almost at the BIOS level. They need to find a way so that it can tell what the frame cap is, whether it's through VSync or some manually set thing. And then it starts doing this thing where it reduces frame rates when there's no movements on screen or less movements.
Yeah.
And I think if they did that, again, I think it would that's it. They now have the most efficient architecture by a lot. And I don't know. I think they should, All right.
Yeah.
Last reader mail question. Guitar Guy 5 asks, do you think we'll see upgradable GPUs with DIMM slots or onboard NVMe anytime soon? I talked to you about this a little bit before we did this, Dan. I mean, there's already that professional Radeon card that has that NVMe SSD built onto it as this super low latency cache.
Yeah, so he said that. So onboard NVMe, I guess now being reminded that that exists is outside of the realm of possibility. Upgradable.
It could happen though, right? They could just build in half a gigabyte of cache and just be there's now it never. Honestly, there's a smart argument if they even just put a super fast 128 gigabytes into the graphics card. Now it never offloads to your DDR4.
Yeah, but yeah. I guess I'm going back to the upgradable part. Do you think that sounds realistic at all, or no?
Because I think so on the graphics card, no.
Because I feel like that goes back to my earlier point where I said we really want, as PC hardware people, things to upgrade with our parts, but I don't think that's where the majority of people that are buying things are at.
Why can't I upgrade overclock my SSD?
I'm sure if you could, a lot of people would.
I've seen it. There are a couple you can from OCZ. Because that's what you want. Data failure.
Yeah.
There's overclockable power supplies from EVGA.
Why not?
What I want. I want my desktop to crash and to have no fucking clue which part it was that failed.
But no, I mean, I guess having something like onboard NVMe, I guess that could be a few years down the line. I don't know.
Yeah. I would just say I think the future that we want to, or I think whether you guys realize it or not, I think the ideal future, it's my opinion, would be you buy memory, you buy APU, and you buy a motherboard, and then you get the fuck out. That's it. You just get a motherboard, you buy an APU, and the APU is perfectly balanced between the CPU and the graphics card. And then you say, well, this graphics card's pretty powerful, but I'm mostly doing compute tasks. Let me buy GDR6 DIMMs, or I'm doing a lot of gaming and it needs to be low latency. Let me buy HBM DIMMs. And then the HBM can also save the information on it. That's probably 10 years or more out, but that's the goal, right? Just DIMM slots that are a terabyte each.
Which I would say the main issue with that future would be competing computer parts companies. It wouldn't allow you to mix and match anymore, which, I mean...
Well, you can now mix and match HBM with Polaris or...
Yeah, that's true. I can easily see a company attempting to make that the standard, and I don't know if it would necessarily work.
But what if it, because everything was closer, also gave you a 50% performance boost?
If it did, then every other company would be forced to move to the new system, I guess.
Yeah. And there will always be add-on storage. right? And there will always be adding another SSD in the background or something.
Yeah.
Well, Dan,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's all.
I guess the last thing I wanted to close on is kind of a closing theme here, and it's something I'll probably cover in loose ends, is more just big changes coming to the Patreon tiers and the Discord, the channel. I don't know if you guys have noticed how much has been changing and how much content and how the quality of it over time here and how much more stuff I'm giving. But I just want to point out basically that, there's now an exclusive podcast, Die Shrink. And to those that say, why is there a paywall? Well, we've also been increasing how many broken silicons there are. So there's no paywall added. We're just giving more content to the people supporting us. So all I'm saying is, if you're on the fence about, obviously, if you're already supporting us, go for it. You're already doing it. Thank you. And that's awesome. But if you're on the fence, there is a ton of stuff on the Patreon now that you can utilize. And it's not just me. Dan's here too. I'd like to start giving Dan some scraps for helping me out so much all the time. Some grits off of the side of the table here and there for his time. And also, I mean, there's an audio engineer making this stuff. I want to start compensating him. And I have someone who helps me with editing from time to time. I want to compensate him. I want to hire more people. So just keep that in mind. If you're on the fence, you're getting a lot more now. And if you're one of those more professional users, use the boardroom. Talk to me more. That's where you can literally talk to me. We're almost to the 384. Well, we're not, but we're getting there. I think we might get there by the end of the year, hopefully, the 384 supporter goal. And at that point, I think I've already reached all of my goals to get to that goal. So I think you'll be rewarded already. And don't worry, I'm going to add another goal after the 384 one. And it's for some absurdly huge changes and upgrades to quality. It's just, here's the thing, going from what I'm doing now to like higher quality video, audio, and a larger team requires more than twice the money.
Yes.
And I do. I'm looking at cameras. Hey, guys, did you know the difference between the camera I have now and one that I consider significantly better is like a factor of 10?
Yeah. You just get to a point and then it's like, oh, that's the end of amateur and here's the professional stuff.
Which I'm moving towards getting to. And even just using 4K, which my camera is actually capable of. I just do it in 1080p so that I can render and manage data easier and send it around to everyone across the world better. Eventually I will move to 4K, but I want to do it at the same time. I want Threadripper. I want 4K, higher quality audio. I want more storage. You have to do it all at once. It's going to take another tier. So again, if you're on the fence about supporting us, keep in mind that this is still just the start, and the stuff I'm thinking of doing for once I got to the next level, the video format itself would change. Like the way I would present videos would be insanely higher quality, like aiming for like Netflix video news quality. So I don't know. Anything to add to that, Dan?
No. No, I mean, that's just big changes to the channel that you're running. I'm a part of it, but you're running it.
Yeah, and I don't know. The one thing I'll say is I'm not going to scale this up by just shitting out more videos a week. I think I've kind of figured it out. I want to do Broken Silicon every Wednesday. I want to do a Die Shrink for now. We're not sure if it's weekly, but at least every other week on a Friday. And when we can, every week eventually, maybe, depending on timing and if you're paying us. And then a big video on Thursdays. And then I'm thinking of doing a small video every Sunday or around there. And then I just leave Fridays and Saturdays and Mondays and Tuesdays open because I like to get out quick videos as responses. And it's just like, yeah, I'll just have Fridays, Mondays, and Tuesdays, the least, or especially Mondays and Tuesdays, the least profitable days to release videos, wide open in case something drops. And then I just drop, impromptu quick reaction video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not just going to shit out more videos, guys. What's going to happen is you'll get 1 to 2 podcasts a week. And because we can do these all day. And also because then I can just focus on making 2 videos to 3 videos a week, higher quality. So the quality is going to go up is what's going to happen. And the amount of research done. In fact, it'd be good if I could have a fact checker. It'd probably be the next person I would hire.
Do you have more to add? I don't think I have anything else to say. But
No, just want to remind everyone that we exist. Of course, I'm sure everyone at the 1.5 hour mark is fans. So maybe it should have been at the beginning. I don't know. I know there's a lot of fans. I've done the polling that are still on the fence. So
okay, well, I hope it convinces them.
as Dan said in the first episode, tell me if I'm okay.
Guys, and I'll say it again now, guys, am I at least okay?
And we'll go through the other ones. AMD is not sitting still. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. You'll listen to another episode next week. Sweet dreams, darlings.
Goodbye.
Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast, is predominantly brought to you by me, Tom, of Moore's Law is Dead. And you can find all of my content, including videos, articles, and this podcast at www.mooreslawsdead.com. And of course, it is also often co-hosted by my brother, Dan. And it is edited by my sound engineer, Gerard Cortez. You can find his contact information at www.mooreslawsdead.com. You can also find the contact information of my article editor, Carbon Cry. Now, of course, if you want to keep the show running, I really do hope you rate me on your podcasting platform of choice. Share it with your friends. And if you have the money, but only if you do, consider supporting me on Patreon at Moore's Law is Dead. If you do, you get access to the Discord to talk to other enlightening people who work not just at AMD, not just at Nvidia, but often in the server space and other computing areas that people often overlook. And of course, if you support it, you can get access to reading these people's names that keep the show running. But without further ado, let me give thanks to my greatest supporters. On September 20th, 2019, the following supporters are the NetBurst 10 GHz or a higher producer tier. Bootman, Hunter Drake, Dean, Ruckus, Justin Yant, Thomas Rupp, Tomas Braz, Jesse Blanton, Jordan Betcher, Mohammed Al-Kawari, Matthew Brubacher, Prime Tech TV, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Herod, Calm Marco, Otterwise Tech, Thyris, the Ninth Dude, Greg Renegar, Kulin Lau, Daniel Cage, Night Rogue 77, Mechanical Philosopher, Lebo King Kilo, Bollocks, Derek Evans, Matthew McMullen, Christoph Novak, Neil X01, Matt Salem, Aaron Close, Sexy, Jashi, Frederick Lau, Alexander Dolar, Alathros, Telos, Caden, Greg T. Wanchek, Jacob Barber, Exoti, and now Whiny Care Bear. And of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.